All right, so hello everyone. Good evening. If you're here for the 2023 Snowshoeing Preseason Coaches webinar, you are in the right spot. We have a big group tonight. This webinar will be recorded and distributed tomorrow, along with some other information that we'll talk about later on in this webinar. As a reminder, if you have questions, please try to either put them in chat so we can address them at a time that's convenient for everybody, or jot them down or wait till the end just so we can get through all of the content tonight. I don't expect any issues time-wise, but just so we can get through the slides that are necessary here. So on the webinar tonight, Ron Freeman, our snowshoeing venue director, which I believe all of you know. Trish Miles is also joining us, the snowshoeing games management team. Myself, the sport director for snowshoeing, Steve Bennett, the Senior Director of Sports and Competition, along with Mike Sarnowski, the Vice President of Sports. So what will we be covering tonight? We will do a brief reminder on some updated COVID protocol information, go over the typical registration deadlines and what needs to be in by when, winter games, dates and schedules. This webinar isn't to be focused specifically on winter games, but there are some information points that we do want to talk about just to keep you in the loop with everything. Also, we'll go over the events that will be offered at winter games to give you an idea of what to train in during the season here. Head coach certifications, how to reach those, when those need to be completed, along with how you can complete those. We'll go over some on-snow tips, rules, of snowshoeing, and then again, leave time for questions and answers at the end. I will encourage you also at that bottom bullet point, there's a bunch of slides at the end of this webinar that we will not be covering, but it's great content to reference if time allows on your end that will be helpful for the course of the season. So with COVID protocol, as a reminder, at this time, Special Olympics Maryland will follow the state and local jurisdictions based on the protocols there. So at this time, there's no restrictions in effect with the state of Maryland, and we do not expect there will be. But if there are, that is what we will be complying with at this time. An important reminder that we always go over, but some things still seem to slip up. No athlete or volunteer may participate in any manner in a Special Olympics program without a valid and current medical form, the CDW, or volunteer application, along with other necessary certifications. There are no exceptions to this policy. As we're going through this webinar, you may want to jot down the notes regarding the dates that these things need to be completed by, just so we're all on the same page, and then we can focus on the fun part, the sport of snowshoeing throughout the season. Please work with your area leadership. Make sure that they are in the loop with everything. All athletes need to have, again, their athlete medicals in. This is for the health and safety of our athletes. Coaches, again, please work with your area management well in advance of the start of the season, which is now. I like doing these a little bit earlier than we have in the past, just so you can get a heads up and kind of started with this paperwork again, so we can focus on the sport of snowshoeing. An important note on the side there, only SOMD provided and approved medical forms are accepted. So if you're wondering who needs what, this is a great reference point to jump back to. As you can see within the volunteer side of things, as you progress from a volunteer to a head coach, there's more that is required. But I will say that there is a lot of important and helpful certifications as you move up there. So please, depending on where you would like to be within your delegation, make sure that you complete those. On the next slide here, it will show where you can go to check your status on that, which is actually on the next slide, but we'll talk about this one first. So going into the training registration deadline. So that's when your roster needs to be entered into GMS with all your athletes, volunteers, everybody within your delegation that is going to be participating this season. Anybody submitted after this date will not be eligible for the state competition. So that is going to be January 3rd. Your last date for missing forms to be submitted is going to be January 13th of next year. So that's when all the medicals for your athletes need to be in, the CDWs, your volunteer background checks for your volunteers. All of that needs to be in by January 13th. The competition registration deadline, that's when your delegation members and their rosters regarding which events they will be participating in at Winter Games, that needs to all be in by February 6th of 23.
I think as we noted with those dates that Ryan just mentioned, those are the dates they are due at the latest to the state office. So the county programs and area programs may have like 2 weeks prior to this. So again, as Ryan stated in the previous slide, make sure you're in communication with your area leadership and make their deadlines. These are the last dates these can be submitted. So the earlier, the better. But again, these are the state deadlines. The counties may have different deadlines so that they make sure everything's in on time from their perspective.
All right, this was the slide I was thinking about that came next. So if you're wondering where you can find the status on your athletes or with your volunteers, you can go to the coaches resource page. That main page will have all of that information, which is updated frequently. If for some reason you cannot access that, the link that goes out, you will be able to. The document will be a PDF, but I will include it separately so you can access it. If for some reason you do have issues and you're still wondering where somebody stands, I'd be more than happy to look it up individually for you and send you an update that way. But please use this as your first point of reference, as it'll be very helpful throughout the season and with other sports. All right, so as we said before, we don't want to focus or have this focus be all on Winter Games, but there is some stuff that we want to inform you of. I think all of you by now know that we will be at Wisp Resort for the 2023 Winter Games. Those dates are going to be February 26th through the 28th. The 26th will be the time trials date, and 27th and the 28th will be the competition. Some general information with that, all athletes and partners must participate in the time trials on the 26th, which again will be at Wisp, in order to be eligible for the competition on the following days. The athletes may be in 3 events plus 1 relay each day. There's one other note with that they are allowed to switch their events as long as they complete a time trial within that event. So that change can be made up until the last minute there, but they need to complete a time trials within the event that they plan to compete in at Winter Games.
And Ryan, just to clarify, the last minute is at time trials. So you would need to, or the coaches meeting immediately following that.
Yes.
Not just before the 100-meter race is about to start. So, yeah, thank you.
In front of you here, no need to read through all these. There's no events that we're changing that we have not offered in the past. All of these will be offered if there is enough interest in each. As a note, with the 2 asterisks next to the 25-meter and the 50-meter race, those are races that are considered events for athletes not yet able to compete in other events. They're starting events, as I like to call them, kind of leading you into others as you progress through your ability there.
Ryan, just to clarify, the 4x50 is not something we've run before, at least since I've been doing Winter Games. This is just an idea that we came up with to offer some athletes who otherwise have not been able to compete in a relay the opportunity to run in a relay. I mean, I think we will run it maybe just as an exhibition this year, just to see if we have enough interest in it. So if you do think you have 4 athletes who typically only do the 25 and the 50, but would like the experience of running a relay, why don't you send a note to Ryan or to me and see if we can set that up this year. So it is something new. It's not an event that you'll that I know of that we've done in the past. So if you have some interest, if you have 4 athletes, if we can get 2 teams to do it, we'll run the race.
Yeah, and to emphasize what Ron said, thank you, Ron. Please notify both of us in advance just so we can plan. But Ron and I will be in discussion if we do get enough to offer that race. Regarding the events, we again will mention 3 events per day, along with 1 relay. But as a reminder, athletes in the 25-meter race may only enter the 50-meter race. This is the same as athletics type of stuff here. Athletes in the 50-meter race may only enter the 25-meter race or the 100-meter race. Athletes in the 50 may only enter the 4x100 relay if also entered in the 100-meter race. As a coach, please be careful in determining athletes' events, as athletes will be completing or competing in at least 2 events on a single morning and afternoon. We don't want to completely burn them out on the first day there. The days of events will be set in mid-January based on express interest or expected entrance after we review GMS. Again, that will be after the registration deadline in February there. So I like to include this. Yes, it kind of feels like it's all related to Winter Games, but this has to do with how you train. So I do want you to be aware of the requirements here. In order to participate in the relay, the athlete and partner must train for the relay with the other members of his or her relay team. So you don't want to have an athlete training with somebody who will be different than the individual that they will be running with or snowshoeing with, whatever the term is there, on event day. The 800-meter unified race athletes and partners are to run as a tandem pair. Each person with the pair is to finish within 5 seconds of each other. If they do not, they are eligible to be DQ'd. What we do for the time is we combine the total time of both athletes to get an official time. The athlete and partner may hold hands, but they are not allowed to be pulling each other, carrying, or any action deemed unsafe, which will result in disqualification. Ron, at this time, if I could pass it over to you to go over some rule requirements.
Sure. Most of the slides, if you're have been a snowshoeing coach in the past, and these slides aren't different than what we've shown in the past. This is sort of a reminder and a guide for you guys and girls. What our rules are for snowshoe in terms of the snowshoe, the size. If you have an athlete who's, if you have a really young athlete who needs a smaller snowshoe just because of their size, let us know at time trials so we know ahead of time. And the other thing, I was reading the rules earlier today. One thing that we've not held to, and I'm sure nobody is doing this deliberately anyway, but the snowshoes that you run the time trials in should be the same shoes or certainly the same size shoes that you're running the event in the following day. Okay, next slide.
Hey, Ron.
Actually, Ron, if you could, John Bagaski has a question related to snowshoe size for children.
I just wanted to confirm. I have this year. I'm going to have if they go to Winter Games, I'll have 2 kids that were 20-inch snowshoes would be too big.
Okay.
One's 10 years old. So, but I think you kind of answered it as you were going, Ron. That I'm getting them small 14 and 16-inch snowshoes is what we're trying on right now. But
yeah, we're not trying to legislate against younger athletes using the smaller shoes. What we don't want to do is have racing snowshoes for for other athletes who are older and more competitive.
Believe me, I understand. It just the rules were sort of the rules as written didn't allow for it. Yeah. And so that hence the reason I wanted to bring it up.
Okay, and perhaps they'll grow 6 or 7 inches before January or February, John.
I've met the both of them. I would not bet on that.
Okay. Okay. Is that it? Does that take care of the question? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they can wear smaller snowshoes, so I can just work on finding the ones that are appropriate for them.
Yeah. Rules highlights, these are sort of self-explanatory. In terms of the start, when you're in practicing, you should use the same commands that we're going to use at the games. It's helpful for your athletes, to hear the same things, whether they're at time trials, whether at the competition and during practice. And when we do athletes on snow, we'll do the same thing. So everything is common and it's not create any confusion for the athletes. Tips of snowshoes must be behind the starting line. We're not going to DQ anybody who are stepping over the line. We'll just move them back a little bit. for, and I'm not sure if we have a slide for this or not. I don't remember all the slides. We are anticipating another 200-meter oval shaped course at WISP, as similar to what we had down at Whitetail the last few years. So waterfall starts and all the things that we've used to for the last, I think, 3 winter games that we've had down in the tubing area, 3 or 4, should be similar. Okay, next slide. 2 false starts is at DQ. And there's no real differences between here and the track. The thing I do want to emphasize, on time trials day, we're going to try our hardest to get everybody from time trials into the competition. If we have to run some athletes a couple times so they get a legitimate time at time trials to go into the competition, but we're going to need to get a legitimate time. If there's a DQ involved in a time trial event, we'll try to run them again until we're convinced that this athlete is just not, a good fit for that particular race. Okay, next slide. 2-minute rule, something that we emphasize every year. Athlete must progress at least 20 meters every 2 minutes, or 2 meters every 20 minutes. I guess it's 20 meters every 2 minutes. In any race, 100 meters or longer. That's the way the rule states. We're going to sort of keep to that for some of the shorter races too. Otherwise, on occasion, we may be there all day for the athlete where it's just inappropriate, to get going. We just need to get athletes moving, across the finish line. Again, if the athlete has difficulty, he or she has 2 minutes to correct that error. And if he or she loses one or both of the snowshoes, they need the maximum distance that they can go without both snowshoes on is 3 meters. We're not going to get any tape measures out. You all know what that is. For the finish line, folks, snowshoers finish the race when his or her torso has finished the vertical plane of the finish line, not the tips of his shoes. So if you have, clown shoes and there's a close race, it's when the torso crosses the finish line. And again, the athlete needs to be wearing both snowshoes on their feet, not on their hands when they're crossing the finish line. A little bit different with the rules are the same. The exchange rules are the same for relays. What we won't have is, just because of the nature of a 200-meter track versus a 400-meter track, we just don't have room for a 30-meter exchange zone. We'll be having exchange zone virtually on top of the next exchange zone. Exchange zones will be 20 meters. We generally provide the batons. If you bring your own baton, it must be metal or plastic. I think I don't expect that to be an issue. Practice your relays, and we can do this at athletes on snow as well. They must pass the baton to their teammate within the exchange zone. And I think this is true. The exchange zones will all be on straight portions of the course. If we do, in fact, have a 4x50, we'll have to look at the course to make whatever modifications we can in order to have the exchange zones on a straight portion of the track. It's essentially the same locations of the exchange zones as the 4x100 on a 400-meter track. Okay, next slide. Like I said before, I was emphasizing 20 meters in length, and here it is on a slide. So there will not be a fly zone either marked on the course, or it just won't be out there. It's just not enough room. If another thing you might want to emphasize as you're practicing, certainly on athletes on snow, if the baton is dropped, the person who dropped the baton is the one who must retrieve it and hand it off. A dropper of the exchange zone, once it's dropped, the person accepting the baton cannot pick it up off the ground. It must be exchanged from athlete to athlete. I'm turning around because my dog is walking down the steps. We will, similar to the track, we will have our officials place your athletes in the center of the exchange zone after we have shown them the beginning and the ending of the line. If you, for strategy or what they're used to, want to coach your athletes to be either at the beginning or the end of back of the exchange zone, that's fine. We will show them the front and the back and indicate where the center of the exchange zone is. Okay, next slide. For competitors for a relay, if you have a unified team, you can run your unified and your athletes in whatever order you like. Each athlete must complete 1/4 of the distance. Okay, and again, no competitor may complete more than one leg of the race. These are your general rules for disqualifications. One thing I emphasize here, and same thing at track, if it's a race of 25, 50, or 100 meters, it's all in lanes. Your athlete is not necessarily DQ'd for going outside of their lane. If it does involve an impede of another athlete, that's where disqualification comes up. Not necessarily by leaving a lane. If your athlete does not impede another racer when he or she leaves the lane, there's no rule. There's no disqualification for that. On races longer than 100 meters that are going around the loop, we will have a waterfall start, and we will indicate where athletes can cut in. So it's not like the track where we have lanes all the way around the track and we've measured it out. And if you cut inside from an outside lane, that's the DQ. So that's a little bit different for snowshoeing on a 200-meter track, 200-meter course than the 400-meter track. Okay, next. And I'm done. Am I done?
You're free, Ron.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Some key dates to note here: the coaches training, which I don't believe you are aware of yet, but you are as of this exact second. December 1st will be our coaches training. It will be over Zoom. I know Ron and Trish like working with you guys also on the on snow training dates with the athletes, but this will be offered over Zoom. Currently working on content for that. On snow training will be occurring at Whitetail on January 7th and then February 11th. And lastly here, the coaches pre-competition webinar will be on February 23rd at 6:30 p.m. One other thing thinking about earlier, I would like your guys' opinion on this. So we have our WISP site visit on December 10th. Would it be helpful to kind of show you guys pictures and kind of have a discussion with each of you on a webinar, probably 30 minutes or so, at the beginning of January or so, to talk through the layout and kind of talk through some main points that may be helpful for winter games? Yay, nay? I see one. Fred gives me the thumbs up.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, but it's not required.
That's completely
Because I think
correct.
you'll cover it in the pre-competition webinar also.
Correct. At that point, a lot of stuff's already set in stone, so it wouldn't hurt to have your opinion on it as we're moving locations and with your experience. I'm definitely open to suggestions and seeing what makes the most sense for everybody.
Okay.
Okay, so I will set that up for those that would like to offer their opinions there. Again, probably 2 weeks or so into January, looking to set that up. All right. On snow training, we talked about the 2 dates. Each area may bring to 5 or 6 athletes. There's not really a major cutoff that we have at this point. We would like to have as many as possible, but we will have a registration form that goes out just so we can track how many are expected. That will be posted on the coaches resource page along with, per usual, distributed over email once that is completed. That probably will not be in the email sent out tomorrow as stated there, but you will receive that closer to the on snow training dates. Again, I know we offer 2 of those trainings, but try to get on the snow as much as you can. I know that Montgomery County already started their dry land or will be this weekend. So they may have some tips for you. I know that John's an experienced snowshoer with on snow and off snow.
We started last weekend.
Nice, thank you. Resources per usual, please go to the coach's resource page. We take pride in updating those consistently, and I hope that it's been a helpful reference point for each of you. There's also a snowshoeing page under all those resources, which will have information related to everything during the season, along with the state competition, but also the results will be posted on there also as a quick reference point to check out.
One note with that, folks, as you may know, we had our website crash back in August. The coach resource pages, the sport specific ones for snowshoeing, alpine, and basketball, just got reloaded. We kind of staggered things out as we rebuild the entire website. Those just got posted yesterday with the information, or today rather, with the information from August. So give Ryan a little time to make the updates, because whatever's on there right now is slightly out of date, but he'll get that and then we'll maintain it thereafter.
Next Tuesday would be a safe bet to check all of that out.
You're not going to do it on the plane to San Antonio, huh?
I think I will pass. If you have questions related to any of our sports, I think you know how to reach us, but if not, I will be overseeing snowshoeing. Currently, we're looking to hire a sport director for alpine skiing. I know that we have had some recent interviews working on finalizing that. Until that point, Steve Bennett, our Senior Director of Sports and Competition, will be your main contact there. And Melissa Enger, who does not have a winter sport, but will be in the control center and helping us out per usual, and is always a tremendous help. Has basketball upcoming, which I think is her next sport. Do we have any questions?
While we're
I don't
looking,
see
while
any
we're
in the
looking,
chat,
well-
that haven't already been addressed. Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
while we're looking at those questions, or if anybody has any, what I want to do is just really quickly go through the additional resources that Ryan indicated were within this slide presentation, so that you know as a reference. So with that, Mike or Ryan, if you want to continue to look for questions.
Sure.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like either Ryan and Ron were so thoroughly clear that everybody understood it, or people are so confused they can't come up with questions. I'll pick the former rather than the latter. So.
Mike, I will jump in here with the coaches training. There's going to be a Survey Monkey link that is sent out tomorrow. There is some new content. I don't think we even held a training last year, which was on me. We will be holding that, like we said, on December 1st, and new content will be presented with that, along with hoping to get some video, which we're hoping to have in the works for the next 24, 48 hours or so, at least steps towards that. So please, when you're filling that out, it'll have to do with how many years you've been a coach, just so I know that there's not any new coaches that may need a little bit a deeper dive into stuff that we typically do not cover, but please include things that you would like to have covered. We don't try to have them be an hour and a half to be an hour and a half. We would like to be precise and helpful to each of you as coaches. All right.
And Fred asked the question, at winter games, will the time trials on the 26th, will they be held in the afternoon? And that is the plan currently. We'll, as we get closer, so people can travel up in the morning. As we get closer, we'll give you more information, but that is the current plan for alpine as well as snowshoeing. That way we don't have Ryan and Ron sequestered in a back room trying to do all the divisioning while people are waiting to know what comes next. Okay. And again, I do not see any further questions. So I did want to, I think, I apologize if this was said earlier, but yeah, with us going to WISP, it's exciting to be back there first time in 12 years. But we do truly treasure the partnership that we have with our friends at Whitetail, and are looking forward to continuing to utilize them as a training location and such. So, yeah, Whitetail is very exciting. The one other thing, we don't want to get into a whole lot on winter games. This is about the season. But for anybody who had been to winter games at WISP previously, the venue that we will be utilizing for snowshoeing is dramatically different from what was there before and is much more conducive to the sport. So we'll look forward to sharing more information with that and pictures and such when Ryan and Ron or hosts that conversation in January. So, but it'll be nice and even have some indoor options for things right adjacent to where snowshoeing will be. So. I think that's it, Ryan and Ron, unless any closing thoughts other than, I mean, I'll say thank you, but to everyone, really appreciate it. It's good to see everyone, but I'll toss it back to you, Ryan and Ron and Steve to do closeout.
Nope, I think that's all we have. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Again, please be on the lookout for that email tomorrow, which will include some important points. So thank you all very much. Look forward to working with you again this season. And we'll see you, I guess, in the beginning of January. All right. Have a great night, everybody.